You're really telling me to open my bag in front of my son just because my skin looks like what you're most afraid of, Adrian?
If you have nothing to hide, this will take 10 seconds. That's all.
Her voice didn't shake. That was the part that surprised him. The lobby went so quiet Naomi could hear the air conditioner humming behind the glass walls of Miller Capital. Her tote bag hung from her shoulder, heavy with food containers, a change of clothes, crayons, and a wooden music box that didn't belong to her. Beside her, Oliver's small fingers dug into her coat, confused brown eyes flicking between his mother and the tall white man in the tailored suit. Adrian Miller's jaw was clenched so tight the vein at his temple pulsed. "If you have nothing to hide," he said, each word clipped, "this will take 10 seconds. That's all." A security guard stepped closer. Another shifted to block the revolving door. Phones hovered in hands, not quite filming yet, but ready. The world narrowed to Naomi, her son, and the bag. And just as the guard's hand closed around the zipper, the music box lurched inside, hitting a Tupperware. A single, thin note chimed out. High, fragile, out of place in the glass and steel hush. Naomi's eyes burned, not with tears, with something else. She dug her heels into the polished marble and forced herself to breathe. To understand how a woman who had spent years trying not to make trouble ended up here, we have to go back to the day Naomi first stepped into the penthouse on the 40th floor. The day she met the woman who would change everything, with a music box in her lap and a fog in her eyes. Naomi Brooks had learned early that loud people got noticed first when things went missing. She used to talk a lot. Before the situation at the hospital, before the whispered accusations, before a supervisor used the words discrepancy in supplies and "you were the last one there, and you understand how this looks, don't you?" They never proved anything. They also never took it back. Now, at 32, Naomi's life was built around 3 rules. Keep your head down, keep your job, keep your son out of the crossfire. Chicago's winter wind knifed through her thick coat as she hurried along the sidewalk, Oliver's hand swinging in hers and his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. "Mom," he puffed, breath white in the air. "You walk like you're in a race." "I am in a race," she said, tugging him gently across the street. "Against the clock and the bus schedule. Come on, Ollie. If I'm late on my first day, they'll fire me before I even find the bathroom." "Do rich people have different bathrooms?" he asked, half serious. Naomi glanced up. The building looked like a shard of glass stabbed into the gray sky. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm pretty sure they're shinier." Inside, the elevator whooshed up so smoothly it felt like standing still. Naomi studied her reflection in the mirrored walls. Dark skin, tired eyes, curls pulled back into a bun that had been neat when she left the apartment but already fighting for freedom. She wore her best navy scrubs under a plain cardigan. Professional. Soft shoes. Nothing flashy. Nothing you could accuse of anything. Oliver pressed his nose to the glass as the elevator's back wall turned transparent. "We're so high," he whispered. "Mom, we're taller than the birds." "Don't lick the glass," she murmured on reflex, reaching for a tissue. "I wasn't." "Oliver," he sighed. "Okay." The 40th floor opened into a penthouse where money had been spent on making you forget about money. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Lake Michigan like a painting. The furniture was tasteful, beige, and probably cost more than Naomi's yearly rent. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood. A woman in a fitted black dress stood waiting for them. White, mid-30s, sleek blonde bob, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Brooks?" she said. Her smile didn't move past her lips. "I'm Clara Hayes, Mr. Miller's executive assistant, and that must be Oliver." Oliver looked up at Naomi for confirmation before answering. "Hi." Children aren't typically allowed on this floor, Clara said, already turning toward the hallway. But Mr. Miller agreed to an exception today. Just keep him out of the work areas. Of course, Naomi said quickly. I couldn't find anyone to watch him on such short notice. It won't happen again. I'm sure. Clara's heels clicked on the hardwood as she led them deeper into the penthouse. Mr. Miller's mother, Eleanor, prefers to stay in her suite. We've converted part of it into a private care space. You'll find everything you need there. My job is to make sure you don't disrupt anything, or anyone. Naomi nodded, biting down the impulse to say she'd been a nurse for 7 years, that she knew how to chart medications in her sleep, that she'd changed dressings in trauma wards while family members screamed in the hallway. But that was old Naomi. New Naomi just smiled politely. They reached a door that looked identical to the others on the floor, except for the small brass plate that read E. Miller. Clara paused with her hand on the knob. She has good days and bad days. If she says anything off, just redirect her gently. The neurologist says arguing doesn't help. What does she like? Naomi asked. Clara blinked as if the question was unusual. She likes quiet, she said finally, and routine. And she keeps this old music box she's attached to. Try not to let her misplace it. Mr. Miller gets particular about her things. She opened the door. The air inside was different, warmer, softer. Dark blue curtains filtered the harsh lake light into something almost gentle. Framed photos lined the walls, black and white shots of a young woman in a ballet costume, mid-leap, mid-spin, arms outstretched. Bookshelves hugged one wall, full of worn spines. A bed sat in the center of the room, with a small sitting area off to the side. In the armchair near the window, a woman sat with a blanket tucked around her. Her hair, silver and thin, had once been dark. The shape of her cheekbones made Naomi think of old movie stars. A wooden music box rested in her lap, her fingers tracing the carved lid. Her eyes, when they lifted, were milky around the edges but sharp in the middle. Clara cleared her throat. Mother, this is Naomi. She's here to help take care of you. Oh. The older woman sniffed. Are you replacing that awful physical therapist who smelled like peppermint chewing gum? Naomi swallowed a laugh. No, ma'am. I'm just here to keep you company and make sure you're comfortable. Comfortable, Eleanor repeated, like she was testing how the word tasted. Sit down, then. Anyone who's going to watch me disappear might as well be comfortable, too. Clara checked her watch. I'll be in the office, she said. Naomi, if you need anything, page me. And remember, no wandering into the work zones. The security system logs every door, every card swipe. Mr. Miller doesn't like surprises. The door closed behind her with a soft click. For the first time that morning, Naomi felt like she could breathe. She crossed to Eleanor's side, smiling gently. You have a beautiful view. I used to leap higher than those waves, Eleanor said shortly. Now getting up to use the bathroom feels like a grand performance. Her gaze moved to Oliver, half hidden behind Naomi's leg. And who is this small, suspicious-looking person? Oliver straightened. I'm not suspicious. I'm Oliver. Everyone is suspicious, Eleanor said. Some are just less interesting about it. Her lips twitched. Well, Oliver, do you play an instrument? I have a toy piano, he offered. But it only plays 3 notes and one of them sticks. Sounds like some choreographers I've worked with, Eleanor muttered. Naomi's shoulders eased. There it was, under the fog and the sharp edges, a humor that felt familiar. Surprising. Human. Eleanor's fingers drifted over the music box. Do you know what this is? She asked Oliver. It's a box that sings, he said seriously. A music box, Naomi murmured. The wood looked old, carved with roses and tiny dancers. When Eleanor turned the small metal key on its side, the lid opened with a soft click. Delicate, tinkling notes spilled out. A ballet melody Naomi had heard in movies but never known the name of. Eleanor's hands, gnarled with arthritis, floated up, wrist turning, fingers painting invisible lines in the air. For a moment her face changed, younger, lighter. "I danced to this in Paris," she said. "My last performance. The critics wrote that I moved like the wind. Or maybe like a storm, I can't remember." She chuckled. "Memory is selective, you know. It keeps the hurt and misplaces the compliments." Naomi watched, struck. She'd seen the list in Eleanor's file. Early dementia, mobility issues, episodes of confusion. But no form had captured this fragile thread between who she had been and who she was becoming. Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor, pulling a small sketch pad from his backpack. "Can I draw you?" he asked. Eleanor shrugged. "Why not? At this point, someone should be recording I existed." Naomi set up her supplies, took Eleanor's vitals, made notes. As she moved around the room, the scene fixed itself in her memory. The silver-haired woman tracing the same pattern in the air. The music box's melody looping softly. Her son on the floor, tongue poking out in concentration as he drew. Something eased in her chest. Maybe this job wouldn't be so bad. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something undoing. Adrian Miller didn't mean to linger in the doorway. He told himself he was just checking that the new caregiver had arrived, that his mother was okay, that the company he'd built with sleepless nights and ulcer-level stress wasn't about to be compromised by some stranger wandering around on the executive floor. But when he stopped outside Eleanor's suite, he heard music and laughter. Adrian hadn't heard his mother laugh like that he didn't know how long. Not this genuine, unguarded sound that made her voice lift in the middle like a dancer rising on point. He stayed half-hidden behind the frame. Inside, the new caregiver, Naomi, according to Clara's email, was leaning over his mother to tuck in the blanket, careful around the old woman's swollen knees. She was black, her curls escaping the tie at the back of her head, her scrubs neat but worn. There was a watchfulness in her posture he recognized. The way poor kids at his prep school had used to carry themselves when surrounded by the children of senators and CEOs. On the floor, a boy about 8, Naomi's, he assumed, sat with crayons scattered around him. He held up a drawing for Eleanor to see. In it, a stick-figure ballerina flew above a blue lake, her arms outstretched, a wooden box hovering near her hands like a treasure. "That's supposed to be you," the boy said seriously. "She gave me shoulders like a linebacker," Eleanor sniffed. "But I suppose I'll forgive her." "It's a him," the boy corrected. "And linebackers are strong. My mom says you used to be strong, too." Adrian saw Naomi's head snap up, eyes wide. "I did not say it like that," she protested. Eleanor hummed. "I like him. He's honest. He can come back." The boy grinned. Naomi rolled her eyes fondly and shook her head. Adrian felt something small and treacherous stir in him, a warmth he hadn't invited. He crushed it. "Mr. Miller," Clara's voice floated from behind him. "Your 2:30 is already in the conference room." He straightened. "I was just making sure the new caregiver didn't get lost." "She seems fine," Clara said, following his gaze. Her tone cooled a fraction. "Though I did remind her we don't allow children on the executive level as a rule." "It's one day," Adrian said. "Let it go." "You're the boss," she said smoothly. "But you pay me to worry about liabilities, messes, distractions." Adrian's jaw tightened. Distrust was a muscle he'd worked hard, again and again, until it felt like second nature. He took one last look at the scene inside the room. His mother's softened expression, Naomi's gentle hands, the boy's crayons scattered like a small, bright mess, and shut the door on it. There were contracts to sign, servers to secure, people to double-check. His life worked better when he focused on numbers, not on fragile things like smiles and music boxes. Naomi's schedule settled into a strange, delicate balance. Most days, she left Oliver at school, then spent long hours in Eleanor's suite. They built routines together, morning stretches, medication, tea exactly the way Eleanor liked it. In the afternoons, Naomi would sit across from the older woman, listening to stories from a life that sounded like it belonged to someone in a movie. "The first time I went on stage, my mother cried," Eleanor said one day. "Not because she was proud, because she thought I'd trip and humiliate the family. See? Trauma is a generational sport." Naomi chuckled. "My mom cried when I became a nurse." "Pride?" "No. She was afraid I'd take too many double shifts and forget to find a husband." "Ha!" Eleanor huffed. "Husbands are overrated. Children, though." She glanced at the clock. "Shouldn't your little artist be out of school by now?" "On Tuesdays, my neighbor picks him up," Naomi said. "She's 70 and listens to trap music louder than he does, so honestly, I'm not sure who's babysitting who." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Bring him next time. This place needs more crayons. It's too beige. Feels like death with a budget." "Mr. Miller doesn't like kids around," Naomi reminded her. "It's a work floor." "Adrian doesn't like anything that isn't scheduled on his calendar," Eleanor said. "Come on. What's he going to do, fire me?" Naomi shook her head and wrote in the chart, but the idea lodged itself in her mind like a pebble in a shoe. On the days her neighbor couldn't watch Oliver, and she had no choice, she brought him. "Be small," she told him in the elevator. "Be quiet." He nodded solemnly, but as soon as he stepped into Eleanor's room and saw the view, his eyes went wide. "You live in the sky," he breathed. "I'm not sure I live anywhere," Eleanor replied. "But if I did, this wouldn't be my first choice. Too sterile. Too far from real things." "Real things like what?" he asked. "Like sweat," she said, "and cheap coffee, and bad street music, and stage lights so bright you can't see your own feet." From then on, Oliver's drawings filled every scrap of paper he could find. He drew Eleanor with her music box. He drew the lake, the sky, the birds that swooped past the windows. He drew Naomi, bent over a chart, and sometimes Adrian, though he'd only seen the man in passing. Tall, always moving fast, face closed like a locked laptop. One afternoon, as the wind howled against the glass, Eleanor sat unusually still. "Naomi," she said slowly, "do me a favor." "Sure." "In the drawer by the bed, there's a small key. Take it out." Naomi frowned but obeyed. A tiny brass key lay tucked under a neatly folded handkerchief. She brought it to Eleanor. The older woman took it, then pointed to a small cabinet in the corner. "The dark one, with the chipped handle. I told them not to fix it. I don't trust anything that looks too perfect." Naomi opened the cabinet. Inside, on the top shelf, was a small metal box with a combination lock. "Adrian put this here," Eleanor said softly. "He said it's for emergencies, but he made the mistake of telling me how to open it on a day my mind was clear." She smiled thinly. "You'd be surprised what we remember when people assume we can't." Naomi hesitated. "Are you sure? Do you see me getting up to do it myself?" Eleanor snapped. "Turn the dial. 0719. That's the year I debuted in Paris. They thought I'd forget that?" Naomi's fingers moved almost on their own. The lock clicked. Inside the box lay a small, sleek, encrypted drive and an envelope. You're going to give that to him when he needs it, Eleanor said. I won't remember where it is, but you will. You have the look of someone who remembers too much. Naomi lifted the drive carefully. Why me? Because you don't look like anyone Adrian usually trusts, Eleanor said, which means you're statistically less likely to have betrayed him already. Her eyes twinkled. And because you're gentle with my pills and blunt with my bullshit. I value both. Naomi put the drive back and closed the box, relocking it. She returned the key to the drawer. A part of her wanted to say, you shouldn't tell me these things. You barely know me. Another part thought, no one ever trusts people like me with anything that matters. The weight of the moment settled somewhere between those two truths. She didn't realize Oliver was watching from the floor, crayon hovering over his paper, eyes taking everything in. The day everything went sideways began like any other. Naomi woke up before dawn in her small apartment, packed Oliver's lunch, checked the weather on her cracked phone, and counted the cash in her wallet twice. Rent was due in 2 days. Her bank app made her stomach hurt. Do you have to go today? Oliver asked, half asleep, face mashed into his pillow. Yes, baby. She smoothed his curls. Ms. Johnson is picking you up after school, remember? I'll be home before you run out of cereal. He squinted at her. Promise? I promise. The train was late. The wind was brutal. By the time she reached the building, her fingers were numb. On the 40th floor, people moved faster than usual. Suits flashed by. Voices were tight. Even the receptionist's smile seemed stretched. What's going on? Naomi asked quietly as she signed in. The woman behind the desk shrugged, eyes darting to the hallway. Big day, I guess. Something about a contract. Naomi pushed open Eleanor's door and stepped into calm. The older woman was still asleep, music box on the bedside table. The room smelled like lavender oil. Outside the window, the lake was a sheet of pewter. Naomi went through the familiar motions. Check vitals, straighten blankets, prepare meds. 3 hours later, when Eleanor drifted into wakefulness, she greeted Naomi by name, which was lucky. There were days she didn't. Has he signed it yet? Eleanor asked out of nowhere, staring at the ceiling. Has who signed what? Adrian, she said impatiently. The thing, the big thing, the one that's making the whole house walk like it's on thin ice. I don't know, Naomi admitted. He doesn't tell me much. He doesn't tell anyone much, Eleanor muttered. Secrets are his love language. Naomi was refilling the water pitcher when her phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Johnson. Got a call from school? Staff meeting? They're closing early? Can't pick Oliver up. I'm so sorry, baby. Her pulse jumped. She called the school, heart pounding. The office confirmed. Early dismissal due to a broken pipe. Parents had been notified. I can come get him, Ms. Johnson offered over the phone, but not for another 2 hours. Doctor's appointment. Naomi looked at the clock, at Eleanor, at the city below. Don't worry about it, she said. I'll handle it. She hung up, made a decision, and sent a quick text to Oliver. I'm coming. Wait by the front door. The trip to school and back was a blur of trains and cold air. When they re-entered the building, Oliver bouncing at her side, Naomi could feel the anxiety like a second skin. She had never left Eleanor alone for so long before. We have to be fast, she told Oliver. You stick to me like glue, okay? Yes, ma'am. They made it back to the 40th floor. Naomi signed them in, cheeks burning, and hustled down the hall with Oliver practically walking on her heels. As they passed the glass-fronted office area, she glimpsed Adrian pacing behind a wall of screens, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Lines furrowed his brow. Clara hovered nearby, eyes flicking to Naomi as she hurried past. Naomi didn't have time to explain. She didn't have time to ask permission. She just needed to get back into Eleanor's room. Later, she would remember the tiny beep of the security pad, the soft whoosh of a door. But in that moment, all that mattered was the older woman's safety and the fact that Oliver's fingers were cold. The rest of the afternoon passed with only one odd moment. Oliver, back on the floor with his sketch pad, drawing not just the room, but the hallway. The door slightly ajar. A tall, slender figure with yellow hair peeking in, something small and bright in her hand. Naomi glanced at it once and smiled distractedly. "You and your spy drawings?" she murmured. She had no idea those crayons were capturing evidence. The next morning, tragedy stayed quiet. It crept in through logs and lines of code. It dragged its feet through servers and encrypted drives. By 9 a.m., Adrian's world was on fire. "Gone?" he repeated, staring at the empty slot in the safe in his office wall. "What do you mean, gone?" The head of security swallowed. The external drive with the backup contracts and the algorithm prototype, missing. The envelope with the physical copy of the merger contract, too. Cameras show nobody entering your office except you, Ms. Hayes, and... He checked his tablet. "And who?" Adrian snapped. He hesitated. "And Ms. Brooks." "Naomi?" The name felt wrong in his mouth in that context. "She doesn't have access to my office. The logs show her card on the executive hallway yesterday at 12:17 when you were at lunch. The same window of time when the cameras outside your office glitched for 8 minutes. "I never gave her access," Adrian said. "Her badge was used," the man replied. By 10 a.m., Hyatt had confirmed that someone with Clara's credentials had accessed the backup server late the previous night. Clara claimed she'd been performing routine maintenance. The timestamps on her calendar matched. By 11, board members were calling from other time zones, their voices flat with concern. "If that algorithm leaks, we lose leverage. Do you understand, Adrian?" Yes. He understood that a lifetime of control could be jeopardized by one breach, one mistake, one person, and he'd spent his life making sure that person would never be him. "Until we know exactly what happened," the head of security said, "we have to assume the worst. Internal theft, data compromised. If it gets out, the regulators, the press..." Adrian's mind snapped toward the simplest possible variable. Who had new access? Who didn't belong on this floor? Who had already once had some nebulous question mark hanging over their past employment? Because Clara had sent him a vetting report on Naomi weeks ago, complete with the vague incident at the hospital. She denied everything, Clara had said back then, handing him the file. No charges were filed. They couldn't prove anything. But still, smoke usually means fire. Now, standing in his office with a safe missing its contents and his board breathing down his neck, the smoke felt a lot like justification. "Where is she?" he asked. "Who?" asked security. "Naomi Brooks." Naomi was in the kitchen area rinsing Eleanor's teacup when the head of security found her. "Ms. Brooks," he said, voice neutral. "Mr. Miller needs to see you. Now." Her stomach dropped. "Is Mrs. Miller okay?" "She's fine. This is about something else." Naomi wiped her hands on a paper towel and followed him, heart thudding. She tried to tell herself it was nothing. Maybe they wanted to adjust her schedule. Maybe they'd found another caregiver to share the load. But as they stepped into the lobby area outside the executive offices, and she saw the cluster of people, the way their conversations cut off, she knew. Adrian stood in the center, suit back on, expression carved from stone. Oliver, who had insisted on riding the elevator up with her because he liked the view, sat on a leather bench, swinging his feet. His backpack was tucked beside him, bright against the neutral decor. Naomi's throat tightened. Oliver, she said softly. Go sit over there for a minute, okay? He blinked. Mom, what's... Please, she said, with a look that made him swallow his questions. He scooted a few seats down, clutching his backpack. Naomi turned to Adrian. What's going on? His eyes were hard. We're missing a drive and a physical contract from my office. I'm sorry to hear that, she said, genuinely confused. What does that have to do with me? According to our logs, your badge was used on the executive hallway yesterday at 12:17, he said. At the same time, our cameras recorded a network error. Naomi frowned. I went straight to your mother's room, that's it. Did you leave her room at any time? Even for a minute? Did you step into any other areas? No, she said. I went to pick up my son from school because they closed early, remember? I was back and forth, but always to your mother's suite. Our system doesn't show anyone else in that section of the floor during that window, he said. Just you and Ms. Hayes. Naomi's eyes flicked to Clara, who stood nearby with her arms folded, face a mask of concern. Even if I had walked by your office, Naomi said, fighting to keep her voice even, why would I go in? I don't have access. I don't even know your door code. Keys can be borrowed. Codes can be seen. Drives can be slipped into a bag, Adrian said. We're going to search your things. For your sake, I hope I'm wrong. The head of security moved toward her. That was when something inside Naomi snapped. She thought of the supply closet at the hospital, the way her manager had watched while another nurse turned out her pockets, the way the whisper had spread like mold. She thought of Oliver sitting 10 feet away, watching, and she heard herself say, before she could swallow the words, You're really telling me to open my bag in front of my son, just because my skin looks like what you're most afraid of, Adrian? Silence. Adrian's jaw worked. This isn't about your skin color, he said. This is about protocol. Protocol didn't make you look at everyone on this floor, she said quietly. It led you straight to the black single mom whose past already had a question mark on it. Convenient, isn't it? Mama? Oliver's voice piped up small from the bench. What's happening? Naomi's chest ached. Ms. Brooks, the head of security said, please, if you cooperate, we can clear this up quickly. She could refuse. She could demand a lawyer. She could walk away and let them think whatever they wanted. But she saw Oliver's face, and she knew what would live in his memory. Not the nuances of corporate policy, but whether his mother had looked like she had something to hide. So she swallowed the acid in her throat and slipped the tote bag off her shoulder. Fine, she said. Search it. Take your 10 seconds. The guard unzipped it. Plastic containers, a folded sweater, a half-empty pack of wipes, a sandwich bag with crackers, a small sketchbook, a wooden music box. The guard pulled it out. The old carved lid, the tiny key. Eleanor's box. Naomi felt the floor tilt. That belongs to Mrs. Miller, she blurted. She asked me to bring it home to fix the hinge. I was going to take it back tomorrow. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You took my mother's property out of this building without permission? She gave it to me, Naomi said. She says a lot of things, he cut in. Her memory is compromised. The guard kept digging. His hand brushed paper. He pulled out a crumpled drawing. A woman on a bed. A music box on her lap. A door ajar. In the doorway, a tall figure with yellow hair, one hand clutching something small and bright. Is this yours? The guard asked, glancing at Oliver. Yeah, the boy said quietly. I drew it in her room one day. Clara laughed once, brittle. That could be anyone, she said. I work with at least 6 blondes. Naomi looked from the drawing to Clara's hair, to Adrian, to the security guard who was now turning her bag inside out. No drive, no envelope, nothing but food, and the guilt of existing in the wrong body, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. "We didn't find anything," the guard said finally, straightening. The air in the lobby shifted, just a fraction. People glanced at one another. Adrian's expression didn't soften. "Regardless," he said, "the fact remains that you removed my mother's belongings without authorization, used your badge in restricted sections, and were present during a serious breach. Until we know exactly what happened, you're suspended, effective immediately." Naomi stared at him. "You're suspending me? In front of my child? After you just rifled through my bag like you're an employee in the middle of an investigation," he cut in. "Security will escort you downstairs. HR will be in touch." "You're making a mistake," she said. "Maybe," Adrian replied. "But I'd rather make a mistake on the side of caution than on the side of blind trust. That's not a luxury I have anymore." Naomi pressed her lips together so hard they hurt. She looked at Oliver, who clutched his backpack as if it contained the whole world. "Come on, baby," she whispered. As they turned toward the revolving door, her shoulder bumped the security guard. The music box in his hand slipped, hit the floor, and chimed one fragile, hanging note. Naomi didn't cry. Not until they were out on the sidewalk, the cold wind tearing at her coat, Oliver's hand tight in hers, and the skyscraper at her back. The days after that blurred. HR emails. Missed calls from agencies that no longer had any shifts for her. Polite refusals. "We can't risk placing someone associated with an active investigation. I'm sure you understand." Rent notices on the door. Grocery lists cut in half. Oliver was quiet. Too quiet. "They looked in your bag like you stole something," he said one night, lying in bed staring at the cracked ceiling. "Did you?" "No," she said, stroking his hair. "I would never steal, Oliver. Not from anyone. You know that." "Then why did they think—" "Because sometimes grown-ups make decisions based on fear instead of facts," she said. "Sometimes they look at who's easiest to blame." He frowned. "That's not fair." "No," she said. "It's not." The next morning, Naomi stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. A tired black woman in second-hand pajamas. A mother down to her last few dollars. A caregiver with a thin file now shadowed by two separate incidents, both unresolved, both enough to make other people's eyes narrow. She could let it be. She could stay small, move on, find some other job in some other place. But when she walked back into the kitchen and saw Oliver's drawing on the table, Eleanor, the music box, the door, the blonde figure with the shiny object, something in her locked into place. She remembered Eleanor's words. "You have the look of someone who remembers too much." She remembered the small metal box, the key, the combination. And she realized she knew something no one else seemed to have bothered to ask about. Naomi picked up the drawing, smoothed it out, and slid it into her bag. "We're going downtown," she told Oliver. "Are we going to your job?" he asked hopefully. She hesitated. "We're going to try and get it back." The receptionist at Miller Capital's lobby blinked as Naomi approached. "Ms. Brooks," she said cautiously, "you're not supposed to be here." "I know," Naomi said, "but this isn't about me. This is about something your boss is missing." "I really can't—" "Tell him," Naomi said, her voice steady in a way that felt new, "that I have information about his missing drive, and that if he'd rather talk to the press than to me, I'm happy to adjust my plans." The receptionist stared at her, then at Oliver, standing resolute at her side. Then she picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open. Naomi stepped in, heart pounding. Oliver grabbed her hand. "Remember," she whispered, "be honest, no matter what." Even if they don't believe us? He asked. Especially then. The 40th floor was tense. Conversations cut off as Naomi walked by. Clara appeared at the end of the hall like a summoned thought, eyes sharp. "You're not allowed up here," she said. "Security should have—" "I asked her to come," Adrian's voice interrupted. He stood by the glass wall, tie loosened. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked as if he'd aged 5 years since Naomi had last seen him. "Inside," he said, nodding toward the conference room. Naomi walked in. Oliver followed, clutching his sketch pad. Around the large table sat 3 board members, a lawyer, the head of security, and an IT manager. Laptops glowed, coffee cups cooled. Naomi pulled out a chair for Oliver, then remained standing. "If this is another search party," she said, "I didn't bring a bag." No one laughed. Adrian rubbed his forehead. "What do you have?" She reached into her tote and placed 2 things on the table, Eleanor's music box and Oliver's drawing. "I have your mother's memory," she said, "and my son's eyes." Adrian frowned. "My mother's memory is not reliable." "Sometimes it isn't," Naomi agreed. "Sometimes it's clearer than yours." She turned to Oliver. "Tell them what you told me." He swallowed, but his voice came out steady. "One day I was sitting in Ms. Eleanor's room," he said. "Mom was doing the medicine and I was drawing. The door was a little open. A lady with yellow hair came in. She opened the box by the bed. Not the music one, the metal one. She took out a shiny stick thing, like a big thumb drive. Then she left. I thought she was supposed to. That's why I drew it." He pointed at the drawing, at the tall figure in the doorway, the small, bright object in her hand. The IT manager leaned forward. "When was this?" "A few weeks ago," Naomi said. "I didn't see it, but later your mother told me about a lady with yellow hair taking something from her emergency box." She nodded toward Adrian. "She said you'd put it there, that you told her it was important." Adrian's face went very still. The head of security scrolled on his tablet. "We can check the hallway cams outside Ms. Miller's room from the past month," he said slowly. "See who went in and out." "We already reviewed the footage around the time of the missing drive," the lawyer reminded him. "There was nothing—" "You reviewed the office level," Naomi said, "not the residential suite. Because you were so focused on your safe, you forgot about the other place he kept the same kind of thing." She looked at Adrian. "Didn't you?" Clara shifted in her chair. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We're going to accuse someone based on a child's doodle and an old woman's rambling?" "No," Naomi said. "You should accuse people based on facts, which you might have more of if you bothered to look in the right places instead of grabbing for the easiest scapegoat." Adrian's jaw flexed. "Pull the footage," he said. The head of security nodded at the IT manager, who was already typing. They waited, the room filled with the soft tapping of keys and the hum of the HVAC system. Naomi's heart thudded in her ears. She thought of walking out, of finding a cheaper city, of starting over again somewhere no one knew her name or the lies attached to it. But Oliver's hand slid into hers under the table, and she stayed. "I've got something," the IT manager said finally. He turned his laptop so the others could see. On the screen, the hallway outside Eleanor's suite appeared. Date stamps marched across the bottom. They watched a sped-up blur of nurses, cleaners, Naomi herself. Then, in the top corner, a time stamp. 2 weeks earlier. The hallway empty. Then Clara, striding into frame, hair smooth, blouse immaculate. She keyed herself into Eleanor's room. The door closed behind her. "Play inside the room," Adrian said. "We don't have cameras inside the private suite," the head of security said. "Privacy regulations." "Then keep watching," Naomi murmured. 5 minutes later, Clara emerged. In the grainy footage, one hand was tucked into her jacket pocket. The IT manager slowed the playback, zoomed in. It was impossible to see the object, but the movement was there. A hand going in empty, coming out clenched. "Everyone puts their hands in their pockets sometimes," Clara said. There was a tremor under the ice now. "This is absurd. You're building a conspiracy from nothing." "Pull the logs for her system access that day," Adrian said quietly. The IT manager did. Lines of code, timestamps, user IDs. 14 login events from Ms. Hayes' account, he read. 3 server access points outside normal work hours. 1 at 11:43 p.m., entering the secure data vault. "I told you," Clara said, voice rising. "I was doing an update." "Then why?" Naomi asked softly. "Did you log in again at midnight under a masked IP and copy the new compression algorithm onto an external address in Berlin?" The room went dead silent. "How would you know that?" Clara whispered. The IT manager looked up sharply. "That's accurate," he said, stunned. "We just found that this morning. How did you know?" Naomi shrugged, but there was steel in it. "I read the notes in your mother's file," she told Adrian. "The part where the neurologist said, 'Patient retains surprising detail when emotionally engaged.' Your mother was terrified when she realized something had been taken from her. She remembered enough of what she heard on the phone for me to piece together that someone was planning on selling something overseas. I guessed the rest." Adrian stared at her. Clara's chair scraped back. "This is insane," she snapped. "You're going to believe her? A woman you almost fired for stealing? A kid with crayons? An old lady who thinks it's still 1985? "It's 1985 when it matters," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Eleanor stood just inside, leaning heavily on her walker, flanked by a nurse who looked like she'd aged a year in the time it took to get her there. "I told Naomi," Eleanor said. "I told her a woman came in and took the little metal stick your father used to keep under his pillow. I told you too, days later. You patted my hand and told me it was a dream." Her gaze, cloudy but fierce, moved to Clara. "But I know the difference between a dream and a violation." "Mama," Adrian said, voice cracking. "Don't mama me," she retorted. "You let them point at this girl because it was easier than looking at the people who actually have keys to your kingdom." She nodded at Naomi. "You should be ashamed. And you should be grateful she's smarter than you." Naomi felt heat rising in her own cheeks. She didn't want gratitude. She wanted her name back. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes," he said carefully, "given the new information we've seen today, you should probably have counsel present before you say anything else." Clara's mask cracked. "You all wanted someone to blame," she hissed. "You never wanted to look at him, at how he hoards power and data and money like—" "That's enough," Adrian said. Security was already moving toward her. Clara stood abruptly, chair tipping over, and for a second her eyes met Naomi's. There was something like resentment there, and something uglier. "You really think this changes anything?" she spit. "You really think people like you walk out of this building clean?" Naomi held her gaze. She thought of all the times she'd swallowed her anger to keep a paycheck, all the times she'd accepted being mistaken for the cleaner, the aide, the problem. "No," she said, "but it's a start." They led Clara out. The room exhaled. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Adrian turned to Naomi. He didn't look like a CEO now. He looked like a tired man whose mistakes had just stood up in front of him in heels and lipstick. "I am so sorry," he said quietly. The words dropped into the room like stones into deep water. Naomi folded her arms. "Are you?" she asked. "Or are you sorry you were wrong?" Both, he said. I'm sorry I let my fear steer me. I'm sorry I humiliated you in front of your son. I'm sorry I saw you as a risk before I saw you as a person. Oliver tugged at Naomi's sleeve. Does this mean my mom didn't do anything bad? He asked, voice small. Adrian turned to him. For once, his voice softened in a way Naomi had never heard before. Your mom did something very brave, he said. She told the truth when it would have been easier to disappear, and she protected my mother when I failed to listen. People like that. He swallowed. People like that are the reason people like me get second chances. Oliver frowned thoughtfully. So, you're the one who did something bad? Yes, Adrian said simply. Yes, I am. Naomi's chest tightened unexpectedly. Her whole life, apologies from people like him had come in the shape of paperwork, settlement checks, carefully worded emails. Hearing the words was different. Not enough, but not nothing. Eleanor shuffled forward, Walker squeaking. If you're done groveling, she said, let's get out of this fishbowl. I'm tired, and I have a very important nap scheduled. The meeting dissolved. Lawyers murmured. Board members made calls. It went back to their screens. As the room emptied, Adrian approached Naomi. I know I can't undo what I did, he said, but I'd like to try to repair some of the damage. Publicly. There will be a statement. Your name cleared. Officially. And compensation. Naomi raised her eyebrows. You think cutting a check fixes the look in my son's eyes yesterday? No, he said. But it can keep you from losing your apartment. And there's something else. He took a breath. I've been considering setting up a foundation in my mother's name, he said, to support caregivers and single parents navigating medical systems. I've been dragging my feet because I didn't know where to start, or who should run it. His gaze met hers. I know now. Naomi stared at him. You want to hire me? She said slowly. After you almost got me blacklisted from my entire field. I want to offer you a chance to shape something that could help hundreds of people like you and my mother, he said. And I want to put you in a position where no one gets to search your bag ever again. Silence hung between them. Through the glass wall, Naomi could see the lake, gray and endless. Somewhere in the middle of it, waves rose and fell, unseen. You're asking a lot, she said. I'm prepared to pay a lot, he replied with a faint, humorless smile. In money. And humility. And what if I say no? She asked. Then I'll still clear your name, he said. And you'll never have to see me again. You'll walk out that door, and this will be nothing more than the worst week of my life and another bruise on yours. He swallowed. But if you say yes, maybe it can be the start of something else. Naomi glanced at Oliver, who was now showing Eleanor's nurse how to draw stick figures with ballet shoes. Eleanor sat in a wheelchair by the door, music box in her lap, watching the scene with a small, knowing smile. Can I think about it? Naomi asked. Of course. She thought of the rent notice on her fridge, the agencies who'd stopped calling, the nurses on night shifts who'd whispered over cheap coffee about quitting but never could. She thought of a space with her name on the door, designed to make sure people like her had someone in their corner when the system turned cold. She thought of the way Adrian's voice had cracked when he apologized to her son. Okay, she said finally. I'll think fast. 3 months later, the building at the edge of a quieter Chicago neighborhood looked nothing like Miller Capital's glass tower. Sunlight spilled through wide windows onto mismatched chairs and tables scuffed with use. A bulletin board near the entrance overflowed with flyers, free legal clinics, support groups, childcare swaps. The smell of fresh coffee and baking bread drifted from a small kitchen in the back. On the wall behind the front desk, Gold letters spelled out, "The Eleanor Initiative for Caregivers and Single Parents." Naomi stood in the doorway of an office that still felt strange to call hers. There was no wall of screens, no hush of corporate tension, just a worn rug, a second-hand couch, a large desk covered with papers, and a big window that looked onto the street. On the shelf behind her, two things sat side by side: Eleanor's wooden music box and Oliver's framed drawing. He'd updated it. Now the figure in the doorway wasn't stealing. It was standing in the light, holding out the shiny object to the woman on the bed. The colors were brighter. The door was wide open. Naomi turned the key on the music box. The familiar melody floated out, filling the small room. "Makes this place feel less like an office," Eleanor said from her wheelchair, parked by the window. "More like a set for a very sentimental indie film." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Naomi replied, grinning. "Sentimentality pays the bills these days," Eleanor sniffed. "And I like seeing my name on the wall. If I have to forget my own, at least everyone else will remember it." Oliver burst in, backpack slung over one shoulder, basketball under his arm. "Mom," he said, "Coach said I'm getting better at my free throws." "That's because you practice like a crazy person," she said, ruffling his hair. "Did you finish your homework?" "Mostly," he hedged. "Go finish the mostly," she said. "Then you can shoot hoops in the back lot." He leaned down and kissed her cheek, then, after a brief hesitation, stooped to kiss Eleanor's too. "Bye, Ms. Eleanor." "Go jump," she said, waving a hand, "while your knees still work." As he ran out, Adrian appeared in the doorway, tie undone, sleeves rolled up. He'd started coming by the center after leaving the office, claiming he needed to make sure the accounting system doesn't implode. Naomi suspected he just liked breathing air that didn't smell like recycled anxiety. "How did the meeting with the city rep go?" he asked. Naomi leaned back against her desk. "We got the grant," she said. "You're stuck with us for at least another year." He exhaled, relief loosening his shoulders. "Good. We're already getting more applications than we can process. I'd feel terrible if we had to slam the door in people's faces." "That would be your old job," she said lightly. He winced. "I deserve that." "Yes," she agreed. "You do." Their eyes met. Something warm, cautious, and new pulsed between them. Over the past months, an uneasy professional relationship had become something else. Late nights hunched over budgets had led to laughter. Shared rides home had led to confessions. The sharp edges between their worlds had worn down, bit by bit, like stones in a river. He'd seen Oliver's science fair project. She'd seen the inside of his childhood home. They'd taken Eleanor to the park together, watching as she scolded squirrels like old friends. Romance, if that's what this was, hadn't come with fireworks and sweeping gestures. It had arrived quietly, in small choices, in the way he knocked on her office door even when it was open, in the way she didn't flinch anymore when he reached for something near her bag. "You know," he said now, "I was thinking—" "Dangerous?" she teased. He rolled his eyes. "We're expanding the caregiver training program. We should add a module on dealing with hospital administrators who suck." "Catchy," she said. "Very grant-friendly." He stepped closer, leaning against the opposite side of her desk so they were almost facing each other, the music box's melody winding down between them. "Seriously," he said, "we should teach them how to advocate for themselves, how to document, how to ask for help before things get so bad they end up—" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward an invisible security checkpoint. Naomi's smile softened. "We are," she said. "Every time we sit with someone and believe them first." He nodded. "Naomi?" he said quietly. "Yeah?" "I still think about that day," he admitted. "In the lobby, the look on your face, on Oliver's. It's not easy to live with." "Good," she said. He blinked. Good. Good that it's not easy, she said. If it were easy, you'd be capable of doing it again. A beat passed. Then she added, gentle, You're not the only one who thinks about it. But now, when I remember, I also see this. She waved around them, the office, the center, the laughter spilling in from the hallway. I see you standing in front of a room full of donors, telling them the story of how you almost ruined a woman's life because she was the most convenient suspect, she said. You could have left that part out. You didn't. I wanted them to know why this exists, he said. Why you run it, not me. And why I don't owe you anything, she added. But I choose to be here anyway. He looked at her, something like gratitude and something like fear mingling in his eyes. Do you... he began, then stopped. Never mind. What? He laughed under his breath. Do you ever think that maybe the worst day of my life and the worst day of yours were also the days that made this possible? She studied his face. The expensive watch, the calloused fingers from years of stress gripping steering wheels and coffee cups, the shadows under his eyes, the way his gaze dropped sometimes, like he was still expecting to be judged and found wanting. I think the worst day of my life was the day someone turned my pockets inside out and made me feel like I was worth exactly what they thought I'd stolen, she said. And the second worst was when you repeated it. But, she continued, I also think about my son, standing in this building every afternoon, seeing his mom's name on that wall, seeing you treat me like a partner, not a problem. Her lips curved. So yeah, she said. Sometimes I think maybe the worst things we went through cracked things open so something better could grow. He let out a breath he didn't seem to realize he'd been holding. Naomi? Can I take you to dinner sometime? He asked. Not a working dinner, not a talk about the budget dinner, just dinner, with food that isn't on a catered platter. She raised an eyebrow. You mean, like a date? His ears went a little pink. Yes, he said, like a date. She pretended to consider it, tapping her finger against the music box. Well, she said slowly, I do like food. He grinned, boyish suddenly. Is that a yes? It's a text me the menu first, she said. But, yeah, it's a yes. Eleanor, who had been pretending to nap, cracked one eye open. Finally, she murmured. I was beginning to think we'd have to stage another scandal just to get you two to admit you like each other. They both laughed, startled and genuine. Outside, the winter was beginning to loosen its grip on the city. The lake, still gray, held a few streaks of pale blue near the horizon. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment and just listened. To the last fading notes of the music box, to Oliver's laughter in the hallway, to Adrian's soft chuckle, to Eleanor's theatrical sigh. She thought of the girl she'd been in that hospital supply closet, the one who believed that one accusation could erase everything she was. She thought of the woman in the lobby whose bag had been turned inside out. She thought of herself now, here, the same person, but not. The winter that almost broke us, she thought, is finally ending. She opened her eyes and smiled. At least this time, she said out loud, half to herself, I'm not alone. If this story touched something in you, maybe a memory of being judged before anyone knew your name, or a moment when someone chose to believe you anyway, feel free to leave a quiet message for Naomi in your heart or on a page. Somewhere out there, a real version of her might need to know she's not the only one who ever had to stand in a lobby and say, I didn't do what you're afraid of.